Welcome everyone. I'm Gayathri Gireesh, along with my colleague Vikas Gehlot. This podcast is the CEERA initiative, which is the Center of Environmental Law in National Law School of India University, Bengaluru, along with the Department of Justice, Ministry of Law and Justice, under the project Pan India Legal Literacy and Legal Awareness Program. The name of the podcast is OUGHT. The topic for the podcast is light pollution. To discuss this, we have with us Professor Dr. Sairam Bhat. To start with, light pollution is an excessive or an unwanted light which is artificial in nature, which actually disturbs the ecological or the environmental aspects. As the world grapples or faces with many forms of pollution, light pollution is the least debated forms of pollution. And as we make an effort to understand what is light pollution and its implications on environment and public health, I would now like to start the discussion with Professor. Welcome you, sir.
Thank you, Gayatri. Friends, we would like to start this new initiative and we would like to call it the OUGHT initiative, OUGHT. Now, many of you may be wondering what this OUGHT initiative is. It's an initiative from Center for Environmental Law, Education, Research and Advocacy at the National Law School to try and initiate a discussion, debate, or deliberation on what the law ought to be. So while we will lead the discussion on this topic, we would want our community to engage with us and contribute to what should the law be. Of course, we would all know that law can always improve, it can always change, and this is a very transformative process of what we call as the legal reform that is required. So in this podcast or webcast, we will try and take certain topics and we will try and put across the challenges or the problems, or try and look at it from what are the practical realities vis-a-vis these issues that we are going to identify. And from there on, try and contribute to what the law ought to be. Now, some of the issues, there may be a complete legal vacuum. In some of the issues, there may be law or there may be a policy, but it needs to be strengthened and it needs to be, made more certain for its implementation in our society. So, like Gayatri said, today's topic is light pollution. As a Center for Environmental Law, we thought we should pick this area, we should pick this topic, and we should solicit the opinion of our community on what the law ought to be, right? So that's what this podcast or webcast is. As you all know, we have a project granted to us by the Department of Justice, Ministry of Law and Justice, Government of India. This is called the Pan India Legal Literacy and Legal Awareness Project. And our mandate under this project is to look at legal awareness. We are using a lot of mediums and platforms to get into what we call as digital legal literacy. And the podcast or the webcast that we have attending today is one such platform to take our efforts under this project forward. Now, coming to light pollution. Friends, there are various kinds of pollution that we see in our society. For example, there is water pollution, there is air pollution. In air pollution, sometimes we say there is noise pollution. We say there is pollution of the atmosphere. Ozone layer is also getting polluted. There are so many challenges in the field of environment. Now, we know that the courts and also the way the Indian legal system has responded to the pollution through the establishment of the National Green Tribunal. We know that right to clean and healthy environment is a fundamental right. We also know that very recently the Supreme Court of India in the Ranjit Singh versus Union of India case has extended the right to clean and healthy environment to mean the right to be protected against the adverse effect of climate change. So environment is quite a huge context for the legal system to respond. And hence, with the various challenges that one faces, I think one of the challenges that we see today is light pollution. Now, as of now, I don't see any specific legislation dealing with light pollution in India. And hence, there is a requirement for discussing, deliberating what should or what ought to be the law on light pollution. Friends, there are two contextualization of this topic that I would like to propose before you. First, it's a personal story. I was traveling from Delhi to Bangalore on a flight which started from Delhi at 10:30 in the night. Now, throughout this flight, the captain had kept the lights on, and this caused a lot of annoyance to me because one expected that if it's a late night flight, you would actually catch up with some rest or sleep. And the constant bright light that the captain and the cabin crew had kept on gave me literally no sleep, and it actually caused a lot of irritation to me. Over illumination, as we call it in certain spaces, is a form of light pollution. And having studied, some of the aspects of the types of light pollution, I thought that I must give, suggestion to the airline to reduce the illumination so that it can be comfortable to passengers. I think it's very important in a 2.5 hours flight that passengers actually, get exposed to just enough light that is required for them and not to excessive lighting. The second is a very interesting, kind of a fight that a gentleman in Bombay or Mumbai, Mr. Nilesh Desai, he has been taking a lot of initiatives to actually reduce light pollution in the city of Mumbai. His initial complaint was against the Gymkhana. As we all would like to play sports, and floodlights in stadiums or in a tennis court or otherwise is necessary if you're playing in the evening. Of course, while we encourage certain kinds of activities, light to others who are not playing the sports, especially floodlights, can be a major source of light pollution. So Nilesh Desai has been campaigning. He intends to take this forward. He himself was an aggrieved individual. And because he was aggrieved by the excessive light of the Gymkhana, which is all 7 days, he decided that he shall make a police complaint. Now, once a police complaint was raised, the police, of course, has to necessarily invoke the nuisance law. They invoked the Bombay Police Act, and they had to actually reduce the noise, the light. Light and noise are quite interconnected in the sense of how you define it. They had to reduce the light from the Gymkhana. But this happens to be a case where someone has to necessarily raise the grievance and someone feels impacted by light pollution. So I think it's very critical to for all of us to understand that India has a growing number of cities. There is a lot of population that is coming to many of our metropolitan cities. We are lighting these cities for obvious reasons that once you are staying in the city, you have the right of safety, you have the right to commute, and electric lighting of streets are very, very essential civic amenities that your municipalities are supposed to give you. So I think light itself is a matter of right. Energy itself is a matter of right. And hence, everyone should get access to light so that they can enjoy their livelihood and their life in a safe manner. We know that there are a lot of industries that are doing second shift. Hence, light is very required. Street lights are very essential. Housing or homes also require lights. And hence, this is a part of a very important service that the government is responsible to provide for. Now, as we see in India, public lighting itself, there are two kinds of lighting, public as well as private lighting. Public lighting itself sometimes is done without any kind of systematic standards of checking whether excessive public lighting may amount to pollution. To a larger extent, I think in India, we are not aware that light can also cause pollution. This is one reason why we thought this podcast is very relevant and important. How many of you think that light is causing some kind of disturbance to your health? How many of you think that human health can have adverse impact due to light pollution? How many of you think that light pollution results in excess consumption of energy or electricity, which definitely is not good for environment and climate change? How many of you think that we are illuminating our streets or cities, homes, and public streets in a very anthropocentric way? Now, when I say anthropocentric way, I mean that we as human beings need light after sunset. And because we have certain requirements, we are lighting the streets, lighting our homes, lighting commercial and industrial spaces. It's a human requirement. But the necessary human requirement, how does it damage the ecosystem or the rights of other living beings on planet Earth?
Yeah, you have raised a very pertinent question as to how many of us really understand what is light pollution and an anthropocentric way of designing the lights. In all this glittery world of buildings, commercial buildings, high-rise buildings, and the apartments, which are all built in a way where there is least interference of natural light and more requirement of an artificial light. So in this critical stage, how would you want to really define light pollution in a legislative way, in a more environmental inclusive way?
I think that's a very important issue for all legal scholars to think about. But as we all know, that environmental law is a combination of law, science, and technology. And hence, any such definition of light pollution must be a combination of all these three things. Already, I think, as we measure noise, there are certain glare meters to measure excessive light as well. And hence, if we would want to bring in a kind of a definition of light pollution, I believe that we must say that it is nothing but light that is inefficient, that is unappealing, that is unnecessary, and completely emerging from artificial lighting. And this is what I call as excessive lighting than what is actually required. So I think that could be the one possible definition of light pollution. But of course, we should look at our community to contribute more in terms of this definition, or try and better this definition so that it can be incorporated into any futuristic law.
So you would want more research on these aspects so that the rights of the citizens are not inhibited by the light pollution that we think is causing an unnecessary interference with the environment.
Yes, in the sense that, look, we must always believe that if we have to deal with issues like light pollution, we must understand that these aspects may not be of a major issue for policymakers or any other persons to intervene. But environment is of those small issues or concerns, of those kinds of ethical values that we are supposed to practice. And hence, you will notice that if there is an argument to solve the problem of light pollution, or to meaningfully intervene and reduce the adverse effect of life, I think there is a very interesting argument of saying that let the earth sleep, right? Let the sky have its own darkness. And I think this argument comes from the legal status of what we call as earth justice, or what we call as the right of nature. The rights of nature include the right to actually have darkness. We as, from an anthropocentric or anthropogenic centric approach, we want light. We want our activities to go forward. And hence, either we are engaging ourselves in moderate light pollution sometimes, sometimes very high light pollution. But I think if one respects the rights of nature, I think one will restrict the timing for use of lights so that other species don't get adversely impacted by human-centric approach to light. For example, I think a lot of migratory birds may be affected by light. It can affect biodiversity. It can affect so many other species. It can cause discomfort to the biodiversity of the area as well. And hence, should be responsibility bring in a legislation that restricts the type of light and the time of light and the necessary illumination of that light. I think these are very, very important factors that a law must take into consideration.
So, do you think is it one of the possible reason why light pollution happens to be the least debated because it does not affect the public health directly, and it causes an effect on the bird species, insects, and other ecological factors more than the public health, which is not actually visible?
I think that is one of the reasons. Of course, the second reason is that we are not very conscious of our duties towards the environment. I think where you focus on society more on their rights and not on duties, I think these challenges as regards light pollution will definitely come into existence. I think it's also about a particular kind of lifestyle that cities have. Now, many of the cities like Dubai or some of the cities in the Gulf where energy is quite abundant, I think you will see a lot of illumination, a lot of lights that actually bring in a lot of tourists as well. So I think it's about your own responsibility, and you know what is necessary and what is necessary in terms of safety, what is necessary in terms of basic requirements and needs, and what should actually be regulated and controlled. Because I believe that if you talk to lighting professionals or those who are so-called experts in lighting, you will notice that they understand that there is a need for visibility of the streets, but there is also need for visibility of the stars. If you're staying in cities like Bombay or Delhi, probably the amount of light that exists, I think it is very difficult for us to even look at the sky or even try to look at the stars. So while one argues that lighting is required for visibility of the streets, can it also look at the visibility of the stars? I think this is an important balance that has to be created, and experts would definitely recommend doing the same. However, are there good reasons to reduce light pollution? I repeat, are there good reasons to reduce light pollution? If you just look at the impact of light pollution on someone's health, especially sleep, which negatively gets affected due to excessive light pollution, or trying to understand that how excessive lights can be endangering the lives of people. For example, if you look at the three types of light pollution which are prominent, the first is there is something called glare. Okay, light pollution actually is a kind of a glare on your eyes. It can distract you, it can cause a lot of discomfort to you, or it can blind you. So if you see billboardings, especially when you come out of airports, you see these huge billboardings that have used a lot of light, a lot of prominent, and when you're driving, they can actually cause some kind of a glare on you. And if there is a continuous, such kinds of billboards, it may actually affect your eyes, thereby affect your sleep. it may cause you eye discomfort, and so on and so forth. So I think this type of kind of excessive use of lights in billboards or advertisements have to be regulated and controlled. I think closed areas like public spaces, like even airports, must know how much of light is necessary and how much will amount to the issues of glare, or what we call as flashing of bright lights in places where it need not be. So it may cause vision impairment, it may cause lack of sleep or problems regarding the same, and it may cause several other health conditions that we are probably not very well aware of. Second, there is something called light trespass. This is an interesting issue of how a light from some place actually enters either your compound or terrace. It can happen in high-rise buildings as well. And you're unable to avoid that light that trespasses either into your property or into your house. Now, this is also a very important factor that needs to be considered, because I believe that any kind of excessive brightness, especially during your sleep hours, may have a very adverse impact on your health. So I think there are a lot of challenges that someone suffers in case of light not being regulated. However, is it difficult to reduce light pollution? I believe it is not difficult. It is not difficult. It just needs a little bit of education. It needs a lot of sensitivity. It needs public awareness. And it requires experts to suggest that, look, this much of light is permissible and this is not. So I think once people realize that they have a duty towards the nature, they have a duty towards their neighbor, I think any use of excessive light will be moderated and will be regulated as well. Interestingly, I also have concerns about how we use light during daytime. I think that also is something that has to be considered, because I think natural light must be encouraged as far as possible. We have a lot of building codes that actually try and insist on as much as natural lighting, and hence you will notice that we can bring about measures regarding when light pollution is a concern and when it is not a concern. So finally, I think, yeah.
Yes, sir. So I think it's very important that we really understand what is light pollution and what is exactly the effects of light pollution on public health and environment as well. The more we delve deeper into this aspect, we would really understand. And as you already said, this is about what ought to be known and what ought to be done in these kind of things. I hope this podcast or the webcast would shed some light on the aspects of light pollution, its effects, and also its importance in this economically viable world. So thank you very much, sir, for this intervention, and thank you for choosing this topic, which is actually more relevant in this world. Thank you, sir.
Before we close this podcast or webcast, I have a couple of things for our community. First and the foremost is, of course, we are all going to contribute about what the law ought to be. But it's very important, we must also say what or how the law ought to be. Which means, should any regulation on light pollution be something that the municipalities must do at the local self-government level? Option one. Should we allow light pollution to be regulated by states as state rules or regulations? Or has been, very prominently done in the last several decades, that we have issued a notification under the Environmental Protection Act 1986. For example, we have the Noise Regulation Rules of 2000. We have several other notifications under the Environmental Protection Act 1986. Should a notification on light pollution also be issued under the Environmental Protection Act of 1986? This is one thing that our community must engage in. Second, while we can say that any law on environment must be a national uniform law. And hence, it must be something that should come under the Environmental Protection Act 1986, could be one of those arguments to be made. If so, if the law is uniform and all over India there is one uniform law, should then the monitoring and implementation be given to the states? If yes, then should it be given to the pollution control boards, or should it be given to the municipalities, or should it be handed over to the police? Because finally, friends, I think it's very important that the law provides a mechanism for grievance redressal. I'm sure people may have some complaints to make. They must know whom the complaint to be made. Second, one who receives the complaint must also know the remedies for the same. For example, one of the easiest remedies for light pollution could be that they must reduce the brightness of the light. They must see that it does not trespass. They must control the noise within their own premises, or they must change the light that they have been using. So it is all remedies that can be easily implemented, and solutions can be done without escalating it into a legal problem. And hence, it is important that in our podcast or webcast, we must also know that solutions are there. It's just about one, awareness. Two, it is about focusing on what shall be our duty while we exercise our rights. So, yeah, with that, thank you, Gayatri, and thank you, Vikas. I think this is our first initiative, and we hope you will actively engage with us. You will give us your suggestions, your comments, and you will debate. And more importantly, I think we hope that any of you who make this contribution into this podcast, you will not have any fear of being judged as you would do when you make a comment on social media. So all your comments are going to be kept confidential. All your suggestions are going to be probably incorporated by our team in terms of the ought that we may want to propose or draft. And hence, please participate with us, please communicate with us, please share your ideas with us. Some of you may want to share your problems or challenges that you yourself have faced in terms of this topic. Some of you may have solutions, some of you may have contributions to the definition itself. So we are looking at everyone, right from the legal community to the scientific community, to join us in this debate of what the law ought to be. So please, as citizens of a democratic country, I think your contribution is very, very important and critical to the way law is going to be drafted. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for listening to this podcast or to this podcast.